Hi all and welcome to another episode of the Truth, Honour and Integrity show. Very packed. And we're going to cover a range of topics. The song Separate Ways are indeed a common theme recently, as the Divide and Conquer programme given to us by the clowns is now being implemented by the people themselves, and none more so than the alt media. I and we have had to take it on the chin, a raft of alt media hosts, guests and love partner who departed from what we are doing in a raft of poor comments, lies and distortions all thrown at our group, mainly due to our connections with Kim and the Trust. From Shane to Randy to Jimmy and Chloe, and we have overcome all that and pushed on. But given the talk and bad mouthing of me by certain individuals over the past few weeks and the discord it causes, it's time to reveal two more who have stepped away from me and THI. Kim, the trustee, left a month ago. The irony, it was the same date as the Keenan fiasco 4 years ago, and so I guess the 4-year loop still applies in some circumstances. She made the choice herself to switch all operations away from me and THI over to the Tank and Dan, and the please press are increasing, and now at least 6 or 7 separate donation buttons, or let's sell out humanity and buy our Kringle crypto coins roadshow. And yes, I'm fully aware of the members of our group and his own of concerns raised about that group, and I agreed with many of them, but was asked to remain quiet, and I will remain so to a point. But it's now up to those people who raised those concerns to where they belong in their group. No longer does our group have to carry the can for others. Our group has unfairly carried the can for all of it, whilst others got off scot-free, it seems, and maybe that is indicative as well. So we are no longer the firewall, and it's why I took the decision for all questions on Kim and the Trust to now be directed at the Tank group. I have done my part with that, and I wish them well with that. Then this week I received a call from Alan of Circle of White Light, and he wants to step away from THI and the People's Club as well. He wants to focus only on the Circle of White Light now, and I wish him and Steve well, and thanks for the efforts and support given to THI and TBC in recent years. Yes, I know this is disappointing, but we can all sit there moping or carry on as normal, learning, improving and developing the TBC. And so there we have it. And that ends all the whispers and innuendo. And yes, I could have said something earlier which would have helped me personally, but one hoped the wrath had calmed itself by now, but apparently it's not. But given many of the members and people being on edge over this fake pandemic, I decided it was best to just carry on and see what unfolds. But has anyone noticed any difference or lessening of the shows in the past month? Nope. In fact, many have said they've got better over the past month. And now that I have more time, we will increase the most listened to shows and revealing the hidden world and their connections. And I have begun to engage the state groups again. And I'm currently working on 3 separate must listen to shows. We will carry on doing what we have always done. Look after each other. And our group now will get a lot easier and better, that we don't have to spend so much time defending a number of the above mentioned people. Not all, but the bulk of them, which had become so disruptive to our group, and our focus is now THI and the TPC. I tried to bring in a core of people and add to it along the way, as that is the way to defeat the clowns with sheer numbers. But some decided we are best all divided and fractured, and they ultimately are playing the game for the clowns they profess to want to end. THI does not and will not play their game, either with them or for them. As one door closes, another door of greater potential and importance opened this week, as I will reveal in full details later. But as they say, time always tells. Right, with that out the way, we're going to get on with the show, as I have done for the past month to today. And I have been sent a message from Patreon, which many of you donate to me, and I'm thankful for all of you who donate. But they have started to make changes, as they always do. You know the way they play games. And so this was the message from Patreon, from the director. Hi everyone, I wanted to give you an update on some changes that we'll be seeing which may affect some of your pledges. Due to new laws passing in several countries and US states, Patreon will now be required to start charging sales tax on some pledges starting on July the 1st. It is said that less than half of all patrons will be charged sales tax, and for most, the amount will be very small. For example, sales tax rates in the US range from 4% to 11%. So on a $5 pledge, that would be between 20 and 55 cents. Whether or not you will be charged sales tax depends on your location and what is considered taxable there. Not every pledge is taxable. Not all benefits are taxable in every location, and sometimes only a fraction of a pledge will be taxable. The money that Patreon collects as a result of these laws are paid directly to local governments. If you are in a location where sales tax will be required, you should expect to receive an email from Patreon with more information about this very soon. But I wanted to make sure you were aware of the changes ahead of July the 1st when they go into effect. So that's the statement from Patreon. So to counteract that and to make things simpler, we now have two buttons on the website thinkdifferent.thepeoplesclub.org. One for the People's Club and one for donations to me. Now the email solely for me now is the ttwusauk@hotmail.com, and the email address for direct payments via PayPal for the TPC is truth.honor.and.integrity@gmail.com. Of course, we also have the donation button for the TPC on the banner of both Facebook and MeWe. Now, whilst it's in transition, I will still allocate donations this month to the correct accounts, as I have been doing that with spreadsheets for the last few years. But there was getting confusion, as some people were actually sending funds to me and it was going directly to the People's Club account and not to me, unless that person notified me later of where those funds were meant for. And sometimes I switched it over, and sometimes I just left the donations in the TPC. So with the Patreon charging donator tax now, members of my Patreon can send the same donations via PayPal instead of Patreon, with the tgwusauk@hotmail.com address, and then notify me by private message or email, and I will keep your Patreon access open to view all the transcripts. That's the way of getting round of it. And I apologise for the disruption, but this will make things much easier to deal with office-wise for me, and people will know which they are donating to. Now, once again, I want to say thanks to you all for the donations for both me and the TPC. Patreon is my salary, in essence, as this is my full-time job. And I did walk away from a full-time job at the request of many members to do this full-time, and many of you have gained much from THI. And also the fact that, the 4 years of working for the Trust for no pay, and also 4 years of working for the TPC for no pay. And I have to be just about the worst scammer on the planet at this point. Take a bow, clowns. But I had hoped by now that the Patreon would end and my salary for the TPC would come from the trust funding, but that is out of mine and our hands now, and it's up to Kim and Tank to deliver on their promises. Now, I will put up the details on both Facebook and MeWe to do with where the donations should be going, so people are clear. The buttons are there now, that makes it clear, but if some people go directly to PayPal and put in the address, well, you'll need to know the address for myself or the TPC. Now, many alt media will cover the violence, inconsistencies with the narrative, and a number of so-called conspiracies that have risen up recently. And our show can cover some of that, but we are also about the solutions and getting into the psychological side of it. And angry retorts doesn't solve the issue. And we have to have at least one group thinking and acting different. And tonight's show will reflect that. There will be no news sections or sub-intel sections or op-ed sections per se, as they have all merged into one now. Such is the narrative that has come out of our shows, and many of our topics, warnings and predictions are now in the news. The intel tonight covers a third of the show and is fairly explosive in nature. So look forward to that. Right, we're going to kick off with some good news. There's not a lot of good news about, but this is pleasing to see. And also the first two stories about New York. Our show is fairly critical of New York and some of the occupants in it. But it's nice to see the New York people coming together. And on Friday evening, bus drivers in New York and members of TWU Local 100 refused to cooperate with police in transporting arrested justice for George Floyd protesters. And the action comes a day after bus drivers in Minneapolis also refused to assist the police in transporting arrested protesters, shutting down the Twin Cities transit system. And the vice president of the TWU Local 100 said, "I told MTA our ops won't be used to drive cops around, and it is in solidarity with Minneapolis bus drivers." That pleases me no end. That's how you fight back. Just don't engage them. We'll have more on that soon. But it's finally a bit of courage, one hopes, out of all things, that can go viral. That courage is at the forefront. They cannot handle a united peoples. And it's they who should have fear, not us. Another short piece from New York is New York State Farms. Big thank you to them. They have donated £34,000 plus of milk, beef and produce to families in need in New York. Members of the community loaded up their cars, trucks, vans and in one case even a U-Haul to bring groceries to a Minneapolis neighbourhood after riots destroyed stores and shops in the area. Sanford Middle School became a collection site on Sunday for groceries for families living in the area of the 3rd Precinct, and the police station was at the centre of heated protest that turned into riots on Wednesday and Thursday. Stores in the area, particularly Target, were hit by looters and people looking to cause trouble, and Sunday a call was put out and asked residents to bring food and other supplies for families who are left without a place to shop nearby. On top of that, many have no transportation, with Metro Transit shut down due to the riots, and videos shared online shows bag after bag of groceries lining the sidewalk around the middle school. You know, that's fantastic. That's what we want to see. More of that. People coming together. I know there's a lot of people going apart. Maybe that's the way it's meant to be. People find their own level. But what we are also seeing, and should not be downplayed because of the levels of bot-like behaviour, is there's a lot of people who are coming together. Now, commonly, people come together in times of crisis, war or disaster. And that's all very well. But we should come together outside of war, disaster and crisis also. And one hopes that this event that's playing out will change a lot of people going forward. Thousands of people in Spain are protesting against the government's handling of the coronavirus outbreak. The far-right Vox party urged supporters to drive through major cities without leaving their vehicles in order to maintain social distancing. And protesters in the capital, Madrid, drove in convoy and waved Spanish flags as they called for the socialist Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez to resign. Now, Spain imposed some of the tightest restrictions in Europe on the 14th of March, and it has eased restrictions in recent weeks, but Madrid and Barcelona have remained under tight lockdown due to their more severe outbreaks of the COVID-19. This needs to be addressed, and it has to be said. And it's part of the problem that we're all facing. And all cops and government officials have to become accountable going forward. And it's up to us to make them accountable. Not their closed shop, just us system. And what we've seen over the past week or so is cops have been shown to be agent provocateurs, spraying people, running them over with cars and horses, and even more sinister acts of placing bricks in protest zones and smashing windows to provoke the rioting and looting. You've all seen it. And whilst it's not all cops, and I appreciate that, the ones in it need to stand up now and speak out. I warned of this a few months ago. A silent cop is as much of the problem as a bad one. But we the people also have to show them a better way. No violence, please. Use your anger to get clever. Think of non-violent ways to disrupt their organisations. And people are people. Do not differentiate by colour or gender, as both will be rolled out again now by the establishment to social distance themselves from the coronavirus and the fake lockdown. I wrote that last week. It's already happened. And I called for the social distancing of 6 to 10 feet to stay away from cops and government officials until they change the whole corrupt system. Social distance from polling booths, and tell them we don't want their method of governing either. You know? It's one way that's non-violent, where the people send their non-compliance with people who are protecting the system. But if cops want to come and talk to you, ask them to move 10 feet away. You know, some people in the group didn't like the next part, and it's the old failure of shoot the messenger instead of facing the problem. The violence of the police has become a major problem in several countries, not just America, and they treat people with complete disregard, ignore their constitutions and their rights, and they, the police, are enforcing illegal laws against we the people. So next time you get shot with a rubber bullet, run over with a car or a horse, don't come crying to me. Come with solutions, not critiques. Social distancing is not constitutionally legal. So let's reverse it back on them. Let them know we don't appreciate or want them near us, until they learn we the people are not the enemy here. We never have been. Until they learn to speak to people, not at them. Until they learn to come in peace and not with weapons threatening and pointing at us. Till they stop going undercover and creating violence and disturbances. Until they learn to deal with the criminals within their own ranks and high society. Until they learn enforcing a wrong order is not the right thing to do. Social distance all police at 10 feet and tell them we don't want them near us. Forget colours, genders and nationalities. We are people, not labels. And until cops stop treating us as their personal anger management course, hiding behind bushes to collect motoring fines for the establishment, threatening and bullying people, intimidating people because they have a badge and treating us like pariahs, let's turn the tables back on them and make them pariahs in our own community and see how they like it. It's a simple solution and it's the best way to fight back. It requires no violence and does not require you to have nasty exchanges or trade verbals with them either. Just social distance them. Then you are giving them the clear and defined choice of we the people. Come and support we the people, as I have seen many of them have, and I'm pleased with that, or continue to support the establishment and social distance them. Another group I'm social distancing is, and this comes with a clear warning, is the mask wearers. Your children and grandchildren will look back at you all and revel in your own stupidity. Viruses and bacteria thrive in warm and wet conditions, like mold in your bathroom, as an example. Plus, you are refilling your lungs with carbon dioxide, and a lot of you are going to have long-term health issues going forward. The tighter the mask, the worse your conditions. And so I'm social distancing all carbon dioxide breathers as protection of my health and away from their bot-like stupidity. Because that's what it is. And yes, I know some are forced to wear it, and I get that. But people have to stand up and fight back. So here is another THI prediction we will watch to see unfold. There will be a mass of sickness within your own communities by the regular mask wearers in the coming weeks and months, and then we have a potential of a real epidemic. The added concern to do with the masks, and has not been covered by social media, is they all came from the East. And given they've been battling the West for the past decade, and where the virus originated, not to mention the ongoing trade war and the barbs flying back and forth, just how safe are those masks to begin with? Given where they came from, courtesy of Kushner, who's still operating inside the government, and FEMA, who should have been shut down when the Trust gave Trump an alternative 20 months ago. This incident that took place this week has raised awareness, and one particular jackass soccer club in the UK thought they would do a publicity stunt in favour of George Floyd. Now, it's no surprise that that club is owned by an American elitist involved with Epstein and crew. That club is Liverpool FC, whose sponsors are Standard Charter, the money laundering bank, and who are also involved in child trafficking in Asia. Fact. Now, the stunt was the players all took the knee, which has caused much discord in this country for the past 2 years, for reasons most are oblivious to. And how ironic, or coincidental, or perhaps coincidental, it rears its head again with the latest American crisis that will have no end until the people wake up to the reality of what is unfolding. Yes, taking the knee came up again like a past episode of The Simpsons so often does. And this is social conditioning. And now you should realise that the taking of the knee was preparing you all for a future event. The fact that it was highlighted so much in the media should have warned people this was being introduced ahead of an event. And that event was George Floyd taking the knee from the establishment. Whether he's dead or a part of the plot becomes irrelevant. It is and was pre-orchestrated, as their previous programme, which they warned us of in 2017, was beginning to fall apart. Taking the knee is their piss take on the people, regardless of colour, and the people fell for it again. To add to their piss take was what George Floyd said: "I can't breathe," which is symbolic of the masks, is it not? Connect the dots. But taking the knee is not symbolic of showing support for your country, and neither is the flag or the anthem. It is symbolic of bowing before your fake gods, royals and jackass elites, better known as curtsying. Like the term knee capping, with no knees you drop to the floor in submission to your master, and this is them reminding you that they are in control and we are all slaves. With the knee bent, it bends the hamstring and has hamstrung us all. Also on relation to the knee is the cruciate ligament, which goes in the form of a cross behind the knee. With all the religious connotations in relation to that, one ponders that this knee issue has a deeper meaning than most people realise. From knee to knee-L, the latter of which is knee to L, and we are back to kneeling or bowing to the gods again. L, like Al, means God. Which brings us back to the football again, soccer. And the object of the game is to score more goals than the others. And when your team scores, many shout goal. One ponders if this is another of their spellcasts with go Al, go gods. That means fake gods at that. But the great question I ask is, whilst you are bowing to your country and leaders with the knee, I ask, what has your country done for you? Right, let's get into a bit more before we go into a large amount of intel. And this next section is many that confirms of what we warned about in this show, and how it's all around money. Both some who have far too much and the most who have not enough. And as we warned in Clowns in Panic, in fact, people should keep listening to that show because it's getting confirmed now on an almost bi-daily basis. And the American billionaires saw their fortunes soar by 434 billion during the US lockdown between mid-March and mid-May. 434 billion in 2 months. That tells you what they were doing. Predictably, Bezos and Zuckerberg, with a silent F, had the biggest gains, with Bezos adding 34.6 billion to his wealth and Zuckerberg adding 25 billion. According to a report from Americans for Tax Fairness, that's a laugh, and the Institute for Policy Studies Programme for Inequality. And the report is based on Forbes data for America's more than 600 billionaires between March 18 and May 19th. Now, the billionaire gains highlight how the coronavirus pandemic was rewarded the largest and most tech-focused companies. Isn't that what we warned of in Clowns in Panic? And even as the economy and labour force grapples with the worst economic crisis in recent history, according to the report, the net worth of Americans' billionaires grew 15% during a 2-month period. 15%. to 3.382 trillion from 2.948 trillion. And the biggest gains are at the top of the billionaire pyramid. Again, that's what the clowns in Panic mentioned, did we not? It's a top-end billionaire's game. And Bezos, Bill Gates, Zuckerberg with a silent F, Warren Buffett, which someone would eat him, and Larry Ellison. And yes, they have common denominators, I think you all know by now. And seeing combined wealth gains of 76 billion. Elon Musk had the largest percentage gain of billionaires during the 2 months, seeing his net worth jump by 48% to 36 billion. Zuckerberg was close behind, seeing his wealth surge by 46% in 2 months to 80 billion, and Bezos increased his wealth by 31% to 147 billion. Who needs 147 billion? You know, it's just sick. And Bezos's ex-wife, Mackenzie Bezos, who received Amazon shares in their divorce, also saw her wealth increase by a third to 48 billion. Snakes, a lot of them. The political appointee President Trump installed last week to investigate waste, fraud and abuse at the Transportation Department is the same official in charge of one of the agency's key divisions. And that means Howard Skip Elliott is now running an office charged with investigating his own actions. Sounds like the police. Now, Elliott serves simultaneously as the Transportation Department's Inspector General and also head of the department's Pipeline and Hazardous Material Agency, whose mission includes enforcement of safety regulations on nearly 1 million daily shipments of gas, oil and other dangerous compounds. And according to the old government oversight, which there is none, the idea that an independent IG could simultaneously be part of a political team running an agency they are opposed to oversee is preposterous. And that's according to Daniel Bryan, who is Executive Director of the non-profit Project on Government Oversight. Now, Elliott's appointment was the fifth in 2 months in which Trump bothered from oversight he perceived as criticism, replaced a career investigator with an appointee considered more loyal to the president. And in 3 of the cases, Trump has installed new leadership drawn from senior ranks of the agencies the Inspector General oversees. Now, for the first time since the system was created in the aftermath of the Watergate scandal, Inspectors General found themselves under systematic attack from the President, putting independent oversight, they say, of federal spending and operations at risk, as over $2 trillion in coronavirus relief spending courses through the government. It's not $2 trillion. It's just not. As forecast 6 weeks ago, 8 weeks ago now, about the stimulus checks not coming out. They're still not out, are they? And neither is unemployment. But what we have to do is everyone must be accountable. And is it a case of just trust the plan, or does this, like quite a few other actions, raise some concerns? The Pompeo protection, the most recent. Should we just trust the plan? your choice. Although I am pleased at Trump calling Antifa a terrorist organisation, but again the question remains is, why has it taken 4 years to do so? And here's their latest episode to justify that they haven't got the money. With thousands of Washington state residents, this person's identity, it is said, is used by criminals seeking to capitalise on a flood of legitimate unemployment claims by sneaking in fraudulent ones. And Washington's race to help newly laid off residents as the coronavirus pandemic ravaged the economy, they said, left it vulnerable to such scams. And last week officials hinted at the scope of it. And what they're saying is hundreds of millions of dollars were paid out in fake claims. Yeah, right. And much of it apparently went to the West African fraud ring, which is sponsored by Langley, I might add, Nigeria, using identities stolen in prior data breaches such as the massive 2017 Equifax breach. And state and federal authorities have tried to claw back as much money as possible and say they have blocked hundreds of millions more from being paid out. But Washington's experience is nevertheless a cautionary tale, they say. But isn't it ironic or coincidental? They have suddenly unearthed all kinds of scams and hacking to explain away the still not fully paid out stimulus checks, which is now 8 weeks. The delays to people's social security payments being reported all around the country, and massive delays to the unemployment. Funny that, isn't it? Well, actually it's not. And people need to wake up to the reality of what's going on. And here's another state ran by a bunch of snakes. And California, in their wisdom, despite being one of the richest states in the country, if not the, has become the first state to borrow money from the federal government so it can continue paying out rising claims for unemployment benefits during the pandemic. That makes a lot of sense, does it? And the Golden State borrowed $348 million in federal funds after receiving approval to tap up to $10 billion for this purpose through the end of July, according to a Treasury Department spokesman. Of course, the Treasury would give California money because Munchkin is in with Pelosi is why. And the US government has also approved loans of up to $12.6 billion for Illinois and up to $1.1 billion for Connecticut. No surprise there. Another of the richest states where all the clowns reside, or large portions of them, put it that way, through to the end of July to replenish state unemployment insurance. Through to the end of July should be noted, because that's telling you it's going to go on till at least till the end of July, is it not? Like Munchkin turning around and saying your $1,200 is to last 10 weeks. Well, that's the middle of June. And now they're talking about the end of July. Now, California was the only state to have accessed the program so far in the current downturn, according to the Treasury spokesman. That is the Ouroboros programs again, of stealing from one fund to pay another. But the question is, what happens next? Who do you think is going to pay all this back? Yes, the people. Former Democratic presidential candidate Andrew Yang says the United States should seriously look at 4-day work weeks. 3-day weekends are better than 2-day weekends, he said, and we should seriously look at 4-day weeks. Studies show that we would be just as productive, Yang tweeted, and it would create jobs at the margins and improve mental health. Now, the former White House Communications Director, Anthony Scaramucci, will we do the fandango, agreed with Yang's workweek proposal. Of course they would. I wonder where they got that from. 4-day week. And the hashtag Yang Gang is a force to be reckoned with in 2024, according to Mr. Scaramucci. And data shows 4-day work weeks increases efficiency, job creation and mental health. And that guy just gets it, he said. Last week, as the story points out, New Zealand Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern floated the idea of a 4-day work week there as well. Ardern pushed for companies to consider such new policies as a possible way to stimulate domestic tourism after the coronavirus pandemic. I'd really encourage you to think about that, she said, if you're an employer and in a position to do so, if that's something that would work for your workplace. How interesting, a politician would mention that just after our TPC Part 2 video mentioning the same thing. But they are going and are suggesting it for quite differing reasons, as they know that many jobs and businesses will not be returning anytime soon. And that is their reasoning for mentioning it. And so let's keep many of the masses happy by reducing everyone's job to 4-day weeks, and let's spread the jobs thinly to make it look like everyone's got jobs. You see how they work? Now, the staggering reality of the damage this fake virus and fake lockdown has done was revealed by CNBC this week, of the unemployment figures and the recent economic downturn, which was going to happen anyway. Make no mistake about that. It was going to happen regardless. And the article says it has disproportionately impacted women and minorities in the US. And new data reveals that the coronavirus pandemic has hit parents especially hard. And experts say it's going to be especially challenging for those households to return to work. About 51.7 million Americans who live in households with children under the age of 18 say that either they or someone in their home experienced a loss of employment income since Trump declared the coronavirus pandemic a national emergency on March the 13th. And the latest census survey shows that 40 million adults with kids in the house expect they or another member of the household will continue to lose or start to lose income in the next 4 months. And they said this isn't surprising, considering that experts predict Americans with children will face some of the biggest hurdles as companies require employees to head back to the office. Even as they attempt to go back to work, they don't have any way of rejoining the labour force because, in fact, they still are caring for children at home. And that's according to Diane Swonk, chief economist with Grant Thornton. And about 60% of parents in the US have had no outside help caring for their children during the pandemic, according to a recent survey from Boston Consulting Group. We'll have more on that article later. Boeing, it was going down the pan anyway, in case people can't remember before the fake pandemic. But Boeing announced on Wednesday it's eliminating more than 12,000 US jobs, including 6,770 US layoffs, as the largest American plane maker restructures, which is what they were always going to do anyway, downsizing, decentralizing. Remember that from Clowns in Panic? And Boeing also disclosed its plans of several thousand remaining layoffs in the next few months, but did not say where those will be. Now, the company announced in April it cut 10% of its worldwide workforce of 160,000 by the end of 2020, and Boeing said it had approved 5,520 US employees to take voluntary layoffs, and they will leave Boeing in the coming weeks. It also disclosed it's notifying 6,770 workers this week of involuntary layoffs, and Boeing is moving to cut costs as it faces a drop in airplane demand from the pandemic. No, it couldn't be because some of their planes started to crash at regular intervals. On we go. It's all about the money. And it's going to become all about the jobs, as the warnings that we've been given in the show is now slapping us all in the face. But retailers are expected to close more than 3,600 stores this year, following record high rates of closing last year. So far, more than 9,300 store closings were announced in the US in 2019, which smashed the previous record of roughly 8,000 store closures in 2017. Now, the number of store closings this year could be even higher than previous records, according to estimates from the real estate firm Cushman & Wakefield, and the firm estimated last year, prior to the virus, that as many as 12,000 major chain stores could close in 2020, as the Amazon virus creeps up on all of it. Again, that was warned of in Clowns in Panic, was it not? But this pandemic is now putting even more stores in danger of closing, as retailers grapple with dramatic drops in sales, and retail companies have so far confirmed at least 3,600 stores stated for closure in 2020. And then we go to the other end of the scale. As everyone's losing their business, other snakes are gaining. The multi-billion-dollar institute in the Seattle area invests in hedge funds, and it runs a pair of venture capital funds and works with elite private equity firms like the Carlyle Group, Bush. But this is not just another deep-pocketed investor hunting for high returns. It is the Providence Health System, one of the country's largest and richest hospital chains. Therein lies the problem right in itself. Hospitals and clinics should be non-profit, not one of the largest, richest core pirates. And Providence Health System is sitting on nearly $12 billion in cash, which it invests Wall Street style in a good year, generating more than $1 billion a year in profits, and still charging people vast amounts for poor service. Remember, the third leading cause of death, and that hasn't been declared a pandemic in any year, is medical malpractice. Now, after this spring, Providence, despite earning $1 billion in profits on its investments, received $509 million in government funds. Again, therein lies the problem, doesn't it? And it was one of the many wealthy beneficiaries of a federal program that is supposed to prevent healthcare providers from capsizing during the pandemic, with states restricting hospitals from performing elective surgery and other non-essential services. Their revenue has shriveled, and the Department of Health and Human Services has disbursed $72 billion in grants since April to hospitals and other healthcare providers through the, quote, bailout program, unquote. That's where all your money's gone. Same people, same groups, same program. And that was part of the CARES Act. Yeah, they don't care. Is the correct analogy of that. The CARES Act economic stimulus package. In other words, as they said, a bailout of a multi-billion-dollar business that has $12 billion just sitting around in cash. Now, the department plans to eventually distribute more than $100 billion more, and so far the riches are flowing in large parts to hospitals that had already built up deep financial reserves to help them withstand an economic storm, and they still took the money. Meanwhile, smaller, poorer hospitals are receiving tiny amounts of federal aid by comparison, and 20 large recipients, including Providence, has received a total of more than $5 billion in recent weeks, according to analysis of federal data by Good Jobs First. And those hospital chains were already sitting on more than $108 billion in cash, according to regulatory filings and the bond rating firms S&P Global and Fitch. Now, a Providence spokeswoman said the grants help make up for the losses from the coronavirus. Really? There's your tax dollars at work. Yet again, giving to the rich and ignoring the majority. Even after 4 years of government, it hasn't changed. Attacks on East Asian people living in the US have shot up during the pandemic, revealing an uncomfortable truth about the American identity. And although she was born in the US, nothing about Tracy Wen Liu's life in the country felt un-American. She went to football games, watched Sex and the City, volunteered at food banks before the COVID-19 pandemic, and a 31-year-old didn't think anything of being East Asian and living in Austin, Texas. And she said, honestly, I didn't really think I stood out a lot. But that has changed with the outbreak of the pandemic that has killed allegedly around 100,000 people. Most of them murdered in care homes, as we revealed in the expose show. Being Asian in America can make you a target, and many, including Ms. Liu, have felt it. And in her case, she says a Korean friend was pushed and yelled at by several people in a grocery store, and then asked to leave simply because she was Asian and wore a mask. In states including New York, California and Texas, East Asians have been spat on, punched or kicked, and in one case even stabbed. Whether they have been faced with outright violence, bullying or more insidious forms of social or political abuse, A spike in anti-Asian prejudice has left many Asians wondering where they fit into American society. I wish people would just stop that nonsense. And this is where the portal people remain unaccountable. Was they create that? But people have to realise that people are not the problem and need to show some backbone and attack those who created this to begin with. Let's all point at this country. Let's all point at that country. Let's all point at so-called illegal aliens. How can you be illegal on your own planet? Let's blame Muslims. And on it goes. Let's blame the system that created it. Arizona has been in the news this week and filed a lawsuit against GoOgle, accusing it of illegally collecting smartphone users' location data, according to General Attorney Mark Brinovich. And the lawsuit claims GoOgle violated Arizona's consumer fraud laws by tracking users' locations even when they had disabled location tracking settings, and demands GoOgle repay any money it has made as a result. Again, did we not warn of that in the Clowns in Panic show? Tracking users' locations even when they had disabled location tracking settings. It's unreal. Here's another thing we warned about in Clowns in Panic. A common theme, is it now? Microsoft is to replace dozens of contract journalists on its MSN website and use automated systems to select news stories. Here comes the robot world. The curating of stories from news organisations and selection of headlines and pictures for the MSN site is currently done by journalists. Read Langley scriptwriters. There are no journalists anymore. And what they have said is artificial intelligence will perform these news production tasks, according to the Seattle Times. And Microsoft said it was part of an evaluation of its business. This is where they slip these things in as a crisis unfolds. Like they slipped in many things in 2001, like the Patriot Act, and many things during World War II, like the UN and banking procedures, etc., etc. The US tech giant said in a statement, like all companies, we evaluate our business on a regular basis, and this can result in increased investment in some places and from time to time redeployment in others, and these decisions are not the result of the current pandemic. No, they're not, because it was arranged prior, like everything else. Now, Microsoft, like some other tech companies, pays news organisations to use their content on its website, but it employs journalists to decide which stories to display and how they are presented. And around 50 contract news producers will lose their jobs at the end of June, but a team of full-time journalists will remain. I would take note of that, because you're going to see that a lot more. 2 Remington rifle owners are asking a federal judge to revisit a landmark class action settlement involving millions of allegedly defective guns. And this after CNBC reported that multiple customers have complained to the company about their guns malfunctioning even after they were repaired under the settlement. Anyone wonder if this was done deliberately? CNN reporter, Clinton News Network, and his production team were arrested in Minneapolis this week for what the media says just doing their jobs, and despite identifying themselves a clear violation of their First Amendment rights. It's funny they'll spout it when it affects them, but it won't but deny the people same opportunities. And the authorities in Minnesota, including the governor, must release the 3 Clinton News Network employees immediately. Oh my, the Roths and the Black Sun groups fighting now, spreading to the Portal people. Scientists working at Oxford-based Jenner Institute, and you already are aware that these institutes are not funded by the people, are racing against the clock to try to create a coronavirus vaccine before anyone else. Obviously for the good of mankind and not the enormous profits such a vaccine could reap. And yes, I'm being sarcastic. Reports that Oxford was proceeding to the 2nd stage of human trials for the coronavirus vaccine, which would see the number of participants rise to 10,000 people, were met with optimism there. And Oxford's Jenner Institute is working with the drug company AstraZeneca to develop the vaccine. Now, the government projected that the vaccine, if successful, could deliver 30 million doses by September. I guess we're going to have Red October again. Or is it the October surprise that gets run in the alt media every year for over a decade now and nothing happens? However, there's just one problem with this, is the virus is now dying out, and the scientists are concerned that any chance of doing a meaningful trial for the vaccine is dying out with it. It's all about the money and control, you see. Final item before we go into a music break and extended intel is tens of thousands of COVID-19 tests have been double counted in the government's official tally. Public health officials have admitted this week double counting. And diagnostic tests which involve taking saliva and nasal samples from the same patient are being counted as 2 tests. Of course, there'll be 2 fees for that when they bill the government. You see how it works? And the Department of Health and Social Care, which is a misnomer in and of itself, and Public Health England each confirmed the double counting. And this inflates the daily reported diagnostic tests by over 20%. Well, if you're double counting, it's 50. Common Core math again. It beggars belief. With that proportion being much higher earlier on in the crisis, before home test kits were added to the daily totals, almost 350,000 more tests have been reported in government data than people tested. So only 175,000 were tested, but I bet they billed 350. And the discrepancy is in large part explained by the practice of counting saliva and nasal samples for the same individual twice. You know, you can't fix stupid. And Simple Simon is the government. Simple Simon, that's the government. Put your hand on your head and everyone follows. Wear masks and everyone follows. Social distance and everyone follows. In the previous bit, you cannot fix stupid. And therein lies the problem many of us face. The levels of stupidity, the lack of knowledge. Particularly in this country, but in many others as well. Now, on May the 27th, I wrote this 3 to 4 days later. They then started implementing what I was warning about. And the event in Minneapolis yesterday, when I wrote it, where cops killed a person, and forget the damn colour, it was a person in unnecessary circumstances, or maybe they didn't. Like I said, it doesn't really make much difference when there's a programme running behind it. That event is the media's government agency clown's attempt to pull back from the COVID and the lockdown event. They will turn it into a race war. Do not fall into another trap. As the lockdown winds down, they will introduce another lockdown on us, curfews. Think different and all lives matter. That was what I wrote on May the 27th. But we already have martial law. It's called the lockdown. They issued martial law, remember, on March the 21st, and it was in the intel for that show. But it's not a full-scale martial law, as they can't declare that, because who would become the general of martial law, and that would be the trustee. And so they did martial law for and by the people, and the people declared it on themselves. And this is where the problem of a lack of knowledge comes in. Now, curfew means, or the etymology of curfew means the covering of fires, dampening the fires. So what were the fires? The people protesting. Are you seeing the picture now? But when you consider it took the government a few months to get round to dealing with issues and enforcing a lockdown, and how they have reacted so quickly, just a few days to enforce curfews, unless of course it was all part of the plan. Do we still trust the plan? Should we trust the plan? Or wait until they prove themselves with full-on public confirming actions? Something else we warned of, and it's happened to a few of our members, and I'm going to highlight one. And there's reports in several countries now about this practice. But one of our members in Sweden tried to withdraw 7,000 SEK, krona, out of the bank's ATM and received only 4,000 krona back, and is now having to engage Nordea Bank for the stolen or missing 3,000 krona, which is around $322 US. Watch closely your bank accounts and credit cards. Check it regularly. The Pakistan ISI intelligence, a bit like Langley, similar. 111, who are in part a DNC proxy for Antifa, sent 550 tons of gold that arrived by air into New York this week, to which location is unclear at this point, and that info has been confirmed by a second source. Now, Pakistan has also issued a commemorative coin in honour of the 550th birthday of Baba Guru Nanak, whose full name is Sri Guru Nanak Dev Ji, which was born in 1469, and so the commemorative coin is 2019. But the coin was the idea of the Trust for America, and it's how it protects it. And yet Trump ignored it and went with another plan that failed. And as we did meet, both Kim and I, a member of the Pakistan ISI in a meeting earlier this year, one wonders where their ideas came from. Final piece of intel, which will go on for quite a bit. And this next piece will send a shockwave around the world. Of that, there is no doubt. And it needs to be heard on all levels, and for all people to get a grasp of it, and I mean all people. It will require many to expand their thinking and also get an understanding of their situation and ours as we the people also. I was contacted directly this week by people who I will reveal soon, although not the name of the source just yet for safety and operational purposes. And it revealed some startling information that has enormous potential to end the Mexican-style standoff our planet is currently undergoing. Now, first, I will give some background to it, as the information from my sources confirmed many suspicions of mine and also reaffirms many things that have been said in this show. So let's go back to the Illuminati 1 and 2 shows, also known as the Sfali material. She was part of the elite programs as a trainer and responsible for delivering the program that all of the so-called bloodline families have to undergo, whereby they are tortured, drowned, brought back from the dead, poked, prodded like cattle, electrocuted, and electrotherapy are just some of the things they undergo from inside the womb to age 6. And it is often done or administered by at least one of their parents as well as the trainer. In those cases, it was the woman known as Sfali. Now, I still struggle to get my head around females participating in that level of evil and torture. As the bearers of children, one would expect a more nurturing species, but that is clearly not the case. And the females have played a far larger role in the desecration of this planet than many, including myself at times, would like to accept. It is pure illusion. It's a man's world once you know the demographics of the top order. But these people, these are not trainers per se, but handlers, designed to smash all human-based traits out of them, like sympathy, empathy, compassion, and in many cases, love. And this is why most, if not all, people from the bloodline families are cold-hearted, dismissive, and carry no responsibility for their own actions, no matter how wrong or heinous they do or act. Those children are then sent to Waldorf Steiner schools to further their brain entrainment. And a reminder of an excerpt from the Waldorf trainers, not teachers, is that the trainers are encouraged to be touchy-feely with the children and ask them not to inform their parents of what goes on in the school, creating the disconnect. And essentially these trainers in part become the new parents, or for the correct term, handlers. And we have two of these trainers in the alt media, although they have gone very quiet since I exposed them. Alana Freeland, sister of the Canadian politician of ill repute, and Cara St. Louis, which is a fake name, as their real name is Orendorff. And yes, it should be noted. Essentially the children, have little to no humanity left, and they often seek out people who do and try to mimic their actions or behaviours. And people often wonder how they can be so cold and evil and have great difficulty grasping or comprehending that level of non-humanity. And we have spoken about it at length of how we can't judge the morals and behaviours of others by our own standards. But those shows, Illuminati 1 and 2, had major impacts on all of our members. So much so that I had to cancel part 2 for a later date to give our members a chance to grasp, accept the information, release and heal. There are some things many don't like to hear or see. Me also. And perhaps sometimes many members don't take that into account, the effect it has on the show hosts revealing much of the information within these shows. But this stuff has to come out into the light of day. You cannot provide a solution to fix a problem if you don't have the full or fuller picture of what the problem entails. It is the jigsaw puzzle analogy again. You cannot complete the jigsaw with only a small percentage of the pieces, like with the minions who followed Marduk. None of them had all the pieces of the puzzle or the pie. Not one of them was able to realise the full picture or what they were participating in. Kim and I, along with help from Shane the Ruiner, although his help has long since passed, managed to put all the pieces together of who was who, what was what, and where they all fitted into the control structure with a myriad of compartmentalisation administered on all levels, the lowest form of which is the government's. So yes, you can carry on blaming the governments, but they're irrelevant. But the reason for doing those shows was the Illuminati 1 and 2. It shattered the illusion that somehow the elite lives are also rosy, because it's not. And there is a hidden darkness that surrounds them also. There has been a lot of skullduggery done on this planet to all humans, elite or otherwise, including to other beings residing here as well. No one has missed out. All people and beings have been lied to and played, none more so than the so-called elites. And no matter how much they deny the truth, the reality of that fact will not go away. Like Shane and his programming, they were all told this was for their benefit because they are special, and also led to believe they are above the ordinary masses. Now, part of my background work before working for the Trust was to bring people and beings together. And the work done for a while with Shane, who is a Rothschild and a Draco, and that was for a while very beneficial for both species. Now, I have spoken privately to several bloodline family members to gauge their intentions in the hope we could find some commonality and bring some peace for this planet and many others. And that was largely curtailed during my work with the Trust, as the trustee wanted to impart control and narrative and who we engage with. Now, we have at least 2 members, of major bloodline families within our own group. So you see, it's not all of them that are the problem. But this week, a member of a leading bloodline family reached out to me, in part requesting my help, and they wanted me to relay this to Kim also, which will be done via this show. I have warned several times in these shows of not all is what it seems, and I am open-minded of where this information came from and prepared to engage it, and in the hope we can find a solution to the problems all of humanity now faces. This is why the trustee offered a third to the people, third to the Rothschilds and a third to the Black Sun, and predictably the top end of those groups declined it. Why? Because they couldn't control our third is why. Now, some of you will have heard me mention on recent Zoom calls of getting from point A to point B, which is freedom. And I stated if we did nothing in the next 20 years, the old program game will all be over regardless. So why did I come to that conclusion? Well, the reality is only the older members of the bloodline families are 100% behind the death, destruction and harvesting program. The middle-aged group is less interested than the elders, and the younger bloodline family members are decidedly against continuing the old program. And many of them wish to step out and away from that program. In 20 years' time, all of those of the older generation with reduced and somewhat corrupted adrenal chrome, so they can no longer sustain their life longevity program, and all of them will be dead. And with it goes the programs by and large. Now that 20-year span can be reduced drastically if we get help from all levels of society coming together and providing a solution to the problems, and work goes on to drastically reduce that to varying degrees of success. Those problems now are not just endured by we the people, but the elites, psychopaths or otherwise. As a recent Black Sun leader confessed only last month, when asked how he or they were going to fix the global problem they in part created, the answer back was stark and alarming in equal measure. We don't know how to fix it. It has gotten out of control. And this, in essence, is an example of watching it all play out, whereby the fear of the elites would escalate to a point and then seek help. And just maybe this call I received this week may be the straw that breaks the camel's back. Time will tell. But it is potentially the first sign of a crack in the elite world and those that are part of it. Where it all goes or leads to, who knows at this point. But we have to be open to debate and not suffer the almost closed shop dealing of the past year or so, where people on all sides refuse to listen. Our target of attacks on the system was not to convince the top order to quit, but to get their minions to see through their illusion and step down. The top order are complete psychopaths and cannot be turned. They will carry on regardless. And what is all playing out now was, as I warned back in 2015 or 16, and when I went against Shane's opinion on our show, that the infighting between the cabal was the cabal's way of trimming the fat, he said. My response was, not only would it trim the fat, but they would eat the lean as well. And all that will be left will be a relatively few psychopaths with little wealth, little assets, and no control, only the illusion of it. And essentially, we are real close to that prediction coming to fruition now. Not all elites are psychopaths, remember that. The ones that are and have been created that way. Now, with this call, the question will arise, can they be playing a game with us? Potentially. But the implications of this happening and is all coming together cannot be left to chance by being stubborn and non-flexible. Opportunities, when they come along, have to be seized and be given a chance. And if it all goes to shit, we're no better or worse than when we started. A case of nothing to lose and everything to gain. Now, some people will not trust their motives, and I get that. But many people support and trust Mr. Trump. And yet he was bailed out of bankruptcy by the same family at least 4 times to my knowledge. So what is the difference? Well, that difference is time. And time will always tell. So here is the gist of the conversation between myself and representatives of the Rothschilds clan this week. They claim, and I have some validation of this knowledge, although a slightly different interpretation of it, that for at least the past 70 years, the elder Rothschilds have been torturing the bulk of not only their family, but many others also. And perhaps all the bloodline families, including all royals, all Tsar family lines, and many of the upper echelons of society as well. They described a very old artifact that dates back many thousands of years old, that was potentially to be for benevolent purposes, and like everything else when the dark forces gets its demonic hands, or in some cases claws on it, it was turned and used for malevolent purposes with the most far-reaching levels of pure evil in its darkest form. This artifact spans and traverses universes and operates in and out of the parallel universe to our own, and has the ability to take away the free will of almost anyone and make them do the most heinous things ever. They, under normal circumstances, would never have undertaken in any way, shape or form. It has been used extensively on the Rothschilds family members, many of which were unaware of what was taking place or what was going on, and was all perpetrated by the three leading Rothschilds clan members, one of which is not human. For those that don't know, the Rothschilds clan have the highest level of Draco DNA and blood than any other family on the planet. In other words, they are a form of reptilian. This machine is known as the Ark, which is a multiverse machine, and I will try and find out more details on this artifact, but I don't suspect they are speaking of the Ark of the Covenant. In fact, I know they're not. And to my knowledge, there are 7 Arks, and none of those are in the Dark Forces' hands anymore, and so this artifact is different. Over the past 7 to 8 years, we have managed to acquire and remove many of the ancient artifacts declared to be myths, except the myths, for the most part, were real. Many of which were removed from the Draco group, and that has had a major effect of preventing further violence in many parts of the universe. One such artifact is the Star Maker, Star Breaker staff, which has in part been referenced by the tribal peoples in Australia in their dealings in the past with the Draco. That object was acquired in the 2014-15 time period, around the time the bulk of that group left, and is housed safely and not accessible by them anymore. So the elder Rothschilds were stripping away the free will of their own family and forcing them to be and act like them. Those 3 need to be removed from this planet once and for all, and are returned to source. And I don't think those souls will be returning ever again. They are too corrupted and not redeemable. This machine has echoes and may well turn out to be a variant or the central hub for the Vril machines that were uncovered and partially removed last year. These machines underground were creating a frequency sound that interferes with the human brain like an MK Ultra machine. The people I spoke to this week from the family were fairly distraught at what they have endured. Their free will taken away is one thing, but getting them to do the most heinous acts on their behalf is a whole different ballgame. And this is how they get around karma in many respects, as they then, like the modern Hebrew culture, have a day whereby they cast all their karma onto the people. And this is known as the Day of Atonement, and is replicated in Indian religions, Asian religions, spiritual practices, and the so-called Christian religions as well. All their dirty deeds are passed off in a ceremony onto the people. The Hebrew religion, of which all other religions derived from, and like the Zionists, are all connected to the Anunnaki group. Now the gist is, the Rothschild family have got together and decided to disconnect two of the top three from the family altogether. But the third is able to garner sympathy in some way due to his propensity to turn on the waterworks and gain him added time, where people feel sorry for him. Message to the over 400 out of the 700 Rothschilds who are now separating themselves, and any connections to their former clan is ditch the third one as well. You all know who and what he is, and you will have no peace with that entity around you. Learn how to shield yourselves. I've made those techniques available to the family member who approached me. Our members will testify that it does work if correctly applied. They also confirmed several of the reports that came out of our show and the named deaths or eliminations of certain individuals also. The top echelon of the Rothschilds continue to hail Marduk, and were not in favour of the new Draco Queen, who is the sister of Marduk. And they do not want to carry out the Earth restoration plan formulated by the Trust and the team, approved by the Council and also the World Government, who are a group of entities housed within the UK. Despite the Queen's attempts and successful engagements with her by myself and also Kim, they took action against the Queen with the support of Draco elements, and reports suggest that they not only killed her but consumed her as well. A common practice by that group. My efforts to locate her since being informed to date have come up empty. The plans are for installing a new king for that group. Centres heavily around the person known as Shane the Ruiner. He was in line for the Satan role back in 2015, and that was prevented. Remember, that is a title and not a name. But the reports suggest he is or was part of the plot to remove the Queen, and he is in line to the Draco throne, which his cryptic comments inferred to me recently support that claim. Now, some will see this episode or meeting as engaging with the enemy, and some may see it as a plot to avoid the disclosures about their family, many of which we have covered in previous shows. And I do get that to a point, and I will be aware of any potential sidetracking. But with the knowledge I have at that level, I see it as a massive opportunity, one of which I have done earlier working with Shane, knowing full well who and what he is. An opportunity to build common goals and address the issues along the way, until ego, a common problem for that group, took over him, and possibly also coercion by his elders as well. But either way, both learned much from that engagement, and it was a step towards peace. As I have told you all, there's not one person or being on this planet who hasn't been heavily lied to, abused or duped on a massive scale. And we can carry on pointing fingers at each other, or build bridges and work towards peace and also a better and safer planet. Sometimes the enemy of my enemy can become our friend. Time will tell, and caution will be exercised. But the elite world is crumbling around them, as predicted. The reality is there are no enemies by name or fake titles, only by evil or divine, which is the same as light or dark. Most of the enemies on this planet are fake and created only for the divide and conquer program. And unlike others placed in important positions here, I'm not going to come at it from a warrior stance, ego, or completely inflexible. Going forward, all will have to be flexible and open to any and all possibilities of attaining peace. And this is the time for it. I stated back in 2015-16, 2020 we would all see. And yes, the alt media people have seen much, but it's not just the alt media people. I said all would see. And maybe the younger generation of the so-called elites, all of which was falsely created to keep them occupied, are now starting to see through the illusions themselves. At some point, all species are going to have to learn to cohabitate in this and many other universes. This greed-based model of harvesting planets, beings and resources has to stop. It has resulted in countless wars and cost trillions of lives. For what? Nothing. To become fake gods, fake kings and queens, and have every material possessions at your expense of your own life force, energy, and a real life. Because those beings don't have a real life. They live in fear, and they're always looking over their shoulder, as the Queen of the Draco has already found out. But their real loss is the damage to the soul and spirit and their missing connection to source. That does not have a price tag and never will. And will always be the ultimate in richness. I'm hereby, on behalf of we the people, calling on the Council to take the fullest possible actions against those who killed the Queen and continue to plague this planet from their otherworld bases. Enough is enough. I and we kept warning you of continued off-world interference and humans running off-world programs, many of which are oblivious to. It's time for real actions, many of which I and we have requested of you, and quit protecting the lead members of that council and fix things once and for all. And as this planet is a nexus planet, it will fix many other places simultaneously. You fix the problems we can't deal with, and then give us the tools to start the full restoration of this planet, with hopefully many of the younger so-called elites in support of us, not against us. Evil is evil, and it has to be addressed with haste. One must never turn their back on evil, a lesson we have all paid very heavily for doing so. Hi all and welcome back. There are two perfect songs there. The Circle of Life doesn't have labels. Life is life. People are people. And the sooner humanity and all the other beings recognise that, and the sacredness of life, then this world and many others will be much better off. The Council are, in my opinion, strong opinion, are responsible for the death of Queen Elle. I kept warning them, and I kept warning them, and I know Kim did as well. They didn't deal with the problem. It was just the hand that was put up. It's a common theme. Also is a common theme, and I'm going to smash that myth here and now, is that the Council are all so all-knowing. You'll be surprised maybe to find out that they're not. They're not all-knowing in any way, shape or form. They are learning the same as we are. And part of the problem is the same problem. You know, once you see the pattern, it always repeats. Is there are people or there are beings in that council who are frightened to come forward because of exposing their own crimes. Fear. And the council, in part, is protecting several groups who are at the leading front of the council, who have committed a number of heinous acts, not only on this planet, but many others. That will not fix the problems. It just won't. And so, like all the other revocations, cease and desist, we're calling on the council now, and I'm calling them out here and now. Fix the fucking mess. I don't care who you have to deal with on the council. Fix it. and give us the tools to fulfill the restoration plan of this planet that you've already agreed to many months ago, and yet we sit and wait. Well, enough of the wait games. People are dying in record numbers because jackasses don't know how to fix a problem. Well, if you can't fix the problem, go to people who have got the plans. Back to the George Floyd incident. And there's lots of puzzling questions about that incident. And this was submitted by Brittany Bjorklund. And it covers a lot of key questions, or opens up a lot of key questions that answers need to be found. Why does one photo from behind show the man on the road is not handcuffed, and the video from the front that he is handcuffed? Why does the cop car in the restaurant surveillance video different from the one Floyd was lying behind? Different car numbers. Why were the cops in the surveillance footage that arrested him different than the police in the actual incident? Why does the video show the diesel fuel price at 99 cents instead of the regular in the area of $2.49? Why was Waltz acting like this was all okay? Why does Derek have a completely different police badge on top of a second police badge matching his partner's if they work for the same precinct? Why is it not odd that both officers Tao Thao and Derek Chauvin have both previously been investigated for excessive use of force and not charged by the State Attorney General Amy Klobuchar? Additionally, Officer Derek Chauvin is married to his partner's sister Kelly. All in the family, you see. Is there any cop dumb enough to continue kneeling on someone's neck for 8 minutes when surrounded by people and being video recorded? Is it possible for the deceased's cousins and fiancé to be completely tearless during interviews? Why does the main cop have one hand in his pocket most of the time he's kneeling? I'll tell you that. That's a Freemason sign. Why did the kneeling officer appear completely cool and calm, as if he was posing for the camera? Doesn't it seem strange that Floyd and the officer that kneeled on his neck worked security together on the same shift at El Nuevo Rodeo Club? The officer for 17 years, and both were laid off because of the COVID virus. Why did the neighbours of this officer say they didn't know he was a cop and never saw him in uniform? Why has the same attorney been hired as with all the other big supposed police killings of blacks? Attorney Benjamin Crump. The same attorney that worked on previous cases that resulted in buses bringing in rioters from outside the city. Why does store surveillance video show Floyd calmly and submissively walking with the officer and not resisting arrest, while the officer gently allowed him to sit down on the sidewalk, and multiple officers calmly chatting with him? Is this the kind of suspect that a police officer would feel the need to put on the ground and place a knee on his neck? Why did the EMT workers wearing police uniforms, including bulletproof vests, roughly handle and dump the unconscious George on the stretcher. This is not how trained emergency workers lift a person with a possible neck injury. Why did they not attempt triage or try CPR? Can someone really not breathe when someone kneels on his neck, and is the victim really able to speak for considerable periods of time if he can't breathe? Post-killing. Why is a white man that looks like an undercover St. Paul cop in black and riot gear mask carrying a black umbrella walking around breaking windows, and others dressed similarly starting fires and instigating a riot? Is this reminiscent of the Umbrella Man during the JFK shooting? Why were almost all of the rioters leading the destruction of the neighbourhood at the beginning of the riots white and not from Minneapolis, in a black neighbourhood after the police killed a black man? Why did the chief of police make it a point that those inciting the riots and arsonists were not from Minnesota? Why was a CNN news crew not only detained but also arrested? So make of that what you will. But it does raise a number of questions, and I have one of my own. If this was all staged, was George Floyd taking the piss out of the people wearing masks, stating, "I can't breathe"? Something else to ponder on. So the death of George Floyd, or otherwise, was the event for the media and the clowns to backtrack away from the now clearly failed programme of pandemics and viruses. And my warning to the police only earlier this month sadly came to fruition again, and now they're in the firing line of a pent-up public anger. I do not condone violence in any way, shape or form. In essence, you are giving the authorities exactly what they want, whether it was created or otherwise. A successful attempt to show your contempt for any authority is, don't play their game by giving them the reaction they seek. Wanton destruction and violence is not avenging anyone's death, and just becomes an excuse to behave badly, which sadly reinforces the stereotype of the black people. Can you not see that? You have to learn to think smarter than that. You're playing into their hands. I get you have lost a lot of people via the police, but all colours have, as well as their heavy-handed Israeli paramilitary taught tactics, are causing havoc on our streets at levels that are unacceptable. It's just not. And I'm no advocate for the police either. I was beaten to a pulp at 17, left with a broken nose, jaw and eye socket, so I'm well aware of their propensity of violence in situations that never warranted any. But fighting fire with fire means we all get burnt. And there are a number of issues I've covered previously that bear reminding to us all of where all sides play a role that leads to situations getting out of hand. The police seem to think having a badge allows them to act in a manner of violent confrontation with zero accountability. And their role was to protect the public, not beat it, shoot it, or worse, kill people. They and the public have almost forgotten the police's role is or was to protect the public. Now it is to protect the system of corruption, protect each other no matter what crimes an officer does under the Freemasonic Brotherhood Protection Oath. And therein lies the problem with the cops. And that has to stop before more lives are lost for a failed programme. But this show likes to balance things out and look at things in full perspective. All people being shot by cops in the majority of cases were by and large preventable, given the tools they have at their disposal, and ultimately it becomes a matter of choice and a lack of personal responsibility by the police. So I pulled up random figures for cops killing civilians, and it covered the last 4 years, and the analysis is marked. So with the media-based rise is that it's only happening to the blacks, which is engineered by paid agents within the black community to cause dissent and divide and conquer, all implemented by the Soros Foundation and others, called Black Lives Matter. Black lives do matter, but not with deliberate agent provocateur groups called Black Lives Matter, because that is what they are. They're part of the establishment. And that is purely designed to get black people angry and cause discord amongst the populace. So in 2017, the highest group killed by cops was not black, but white, 457. In fact, the totals for black, Hispanic and other combined was less than the white total at 446. In 2018, the highest killed by cops was white again, with 399, and again the combined total for black, Hispanic and others was less, with 393. In 2019, the highest killed by cops was white again, with 370, but was not higher than the other three categories combined for that year of 432. In 2020 to date, the highest group killed by cops is white again, 42. But the other three combined is slightly higher than the white deaths at 47. So what does this prove? Well, clearly it does not show a pattern that cops only kill one colour, because the figures do not support it. Does this mean improve white lives matter, given the statistics? No. It means all lives matter. And that is what the people are missing. Other gun-related violence we covered last year, and the highest statistic was black on black violence. At some point, the black community have to take some responsibility and change the stereotype rhetoric themselves. Even a virtual reality test that was done by all cops of all colours proved that cops would shoot a black person sooner than other races. But you have to ask is, why do all colours, including their own colour, because they shot even sooner than the white guy on those tests? have a larger fear element towards black people. And the answer lies within the black community themselves. Clean up your own areas, stop the violence, prevent gun deaths in their own communities, pool together and create jobs within the communities so young blacks have an alternative other than a life of crime, which many get forced into. Clean up the ghettos. It doesn't matter how poor you are, there is no excuse for not keeping your own communities clean. None. And the very fact all the media is highlighting it tells you straight off the bat it is an agenda driven and not for our purpose. And that should make people stop and think. Pictures of black people looting and smashing things spread all over the social media and awake people posting it everywhere, oblivious of their participation in reaffirming a preset narrative. And at which point do you stop and think? Since when are portal people interested in black people? Like never. Since when are portal people interested in people of any colour? Like never. They are there to read Langley and think tank based scripts designed to fool and distort the public's thinking and mindset. Hashtag social distance and all MSM media solves that problem. The recent expose show, I asked people, because it generated a lot of emotions. I did a couple of posts on the Facebook and MeWe asking for people for comments. And those are not easy shows to compile, write or relay. And in a world of critiques, it is often forgotten the messengers, emotions and feelings of it as well. But with an alt media delving into shallow topics and in essence only using a few pieces of the jigsaw, there are times when on a single subject, which did encompass others, much of which has come from our own show, where you have to strip everything to the raw and to the core and just lay it all out. And I will make no apologies for a single word said in that show, because all of it was 100% truth. Playing hide and seek or being selective with the truth is no longer an option. We asked for the truth en masse many years ago, in the past decade, and we're getting it. But it's a common theme of attacking the messenger due to their own guilt, triggers, shame, and in some cases cowardice. And this is portrayed in a few of the members' comments this week that are poignant and hit the nail on the head at the same time. So this is the first one. It reminds me very much of when I got sober. The people around me, some of them took it personally. Suddenly it made them think that they had a problem, or I thought they did, or whatever. People close to me didn't like it for a while because my behaviour changed. People couldn't get me to react the way I used to. If they don't adjust and keep expecting me to be the same way I was in the drinking times, they end up pulling away. And this is part of the problem. Everyone wants you to be an addict or in low vibration. When a simple change of mindset, we can elevate everyone, not drag each other down. But the envy of people improving themselves is the most ridiculous thing ever on this planet. That person took responsibility for themselves and raised their frequency also. And they couldn't match it, is what took place. Because they were the problem. And are the problem. And it's an example of around 85% of people in your life only being there due to addictions and low vibrations. And the minute you improve, the more and further they disappear. And the whole gist of THI is for people to recognise their own faults and shortcomings, regardless of what they are, and improve it. And that is the primary premise behind THI. It's a learning tool for us all, including me. Now the second post by one of the members kind of sums up the fears of many people now. He or she just had the gumption to spit it all out. I feel stuck now. I don't know if I can support Donald Trump, knowing what I know about him and the Black Sun and his support of and for Kushner. I've come to the realisation that the Q-based plan is based on a plan to herd the population into Agenda 21, force inoculations of the American public. And it breaks my heart to know that the sleepers don't have a chance, and when they do wake up, it will be too late. The latest episode podcast that Thomas so eloquently laid out shook me to the core. Although I felt compelled to follow this channel, I had no idea how much of an impact it would have on me and my life. Because of the show, I am awake now. I no longer smoke, drink, or do any kind of recreational drugs because of the inspiration of THI that has inspired me, has encouraged me to be a better man and be a better human and to live a better life than the life that I've been living here before on this forsaken planet that they call Earth. Thank you for waking me up in a time in my life when I needed it the most. That is why the first message of today's show is not as bad as it sounds. And like I said in the previous piece, the premise of THI is where we all learn, improve and grow as people. Now, some of the items covered in this show are a bit harrowing and a bit of reality this show warned about weeks and months ago, about the staggering amounts of unemployed in this country, but with many still not getting their stimulus checks and also many not receiving unemployment and many following Trust the Plan, it does raise deeper concerns. But the long piece in the intel brings the potential of great hope as well. But in the midst of one of the pieces earlier, it reveals much about the global system and the way they direct opinions. They were always going to need an event of sorts to pull back from the virus, a new media spin, and that post by CNBC, and will be followed by all the others, as all of it is scripted and coordinated. But the key line in that is not how many have suffered. Oh no. It is who they mentioned suffered more. Women and minorities, they said. While early unemployment figures shows the recent economic downturn has disproportionately impacted women and minorities in the US. And this is what they were plugging away at in the previous 2 years. Back and forth they went with the colour divisive narrative and the male and female divisive narrative. And yet again, out comes the Zionist-based meme of white privilege. What a load of bollocks that is. The same white privileged people who pay the bulk of the taxes, I might add. I don't call that a bloody privilege. And this is something we reported and warned of it several times in the shows last year. Stop falling for this shit. Given their patterns are all too predictable, one hopes more see through their lies and distortions and turn them off altogether. We don't need portal people in our life. The From Russia with Love 7 rerun told you how corrupt agencies feed you fabricated news stories, and that has gone on for decades now. There is no doubt in overview that women and blacks have not been treated as well as they should. No one can take that away. But in overview also, there can be no doubt that the behaviour of those two groups has not been the best either, and has in some cases ended up reinforcing stereotypes. It's the chicken and the egg. But it doesn't matter what colour or gender you are, the perception of you always starts with the self. You fixing you changes how the world views or judges you. But if you change you, you care not what their judgments are. So we can all sit back and complain, I'm not respected, cared or looked after enough, but the very fact that so many people think that way is a reflection of society and how we've all lost our way in so many ways. And it's time to stop being the victim and become your own saviour. Our whole world is dominated by repeat behaviours and patterns, and the antithesis of this is we all change. Change who we bank with. Change who we watch on the box. Or turn it off. Change who we shop with. Change from buying from Amazon altogether. Change our health habits. Change our lifestyles. Do and be something different each day. Otherwise, 1 week becomes the same as each other. Go out to meet people more. Go to the park or to the beach more. Take vacations even if it's for a long weekend. Doing something different changes the way they and their AI plots your course, life and path. It can't handle it. And so the answer to fixing it starts and ends with you. One person fixing themselves in a world of predicted, predictable and algorithmic programming has subsequently just changed the whole world. Just you. Yes, you, with all your boxes, victimhood and limitations, can change the whole world by just correcting you. and remember, we are the last in line. This is the Truth, Honour and Integrity Show. My name's Thomas Williams. Bye for now.